This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it is Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. Thank you for joining us on The Truth Central. We're doing these podcasts every weekday. You can find me on X, formerly Twitter, at Corsi Jerome 1, altogether Corsi Jerome 1, the number 1. And in Substack, I have a Substack now at Jerome Corsi PhD, altogether small case, .substack.com. Our first story today I want to cover has to do with Biden. It's being covered today in the news that there was evidently a big chaos in Air Force One. This goes back to, it's just being reported now, but it was in January of 2023, over a year ago, and Biden was on Air Force One and he was exploding with rage at his team. Axios is actually reporting this. Axios is usually a very, very leftist organization. I mean, they don't consider themselves as such, but they're always supporting, they hate Trump and they're supporting Biden. It's always been their bias. Washington, D.C. based group. But what they're reporting here is that there was, quote, infighting, blame shifting, and indecision over the migration issue. And Susan Rice evidently just was berating people, and Biden responded, exploded with rage. Susan Rice, of course, is one of the top advisors to Obama in the White House. And there's been always tension with Susan Rice. She thought that she was a candidate for vice president instead of Kamala Harris. And evidently the Kamala Harris people undermined her with some negative coverage of Susan Rice. Susan Rice was also involved in several incidents back in the Obama administration, which now are largely forgotten, but she was always a very, very leftist supporter and a determined supporter of Obama, one of his inner circle. So Susan Rice called the Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra an idiot, and then Biden was asking for some information that no one had. And Mayorkas disagreed with Biden's 100-day halt on deportations. He wanted to continue. Didn't like the halt. Didn't want a halt on deportations. He wanted to continue. Biden was saying, no, he wanted open borders. And of course, publicly, the White House has been downplaying the incredible number of increases in illegal border crossings as normal ebbs and flows. Now, what the backstory here is that there's increasing pressure on the Democratic Party, given the special prosecutor's report that Biden was too much senior dimension to be prosecuted for what evidently were obvious violations of handling national security documents. In other words, Biden had these documents in his garage, and totally, even as vice president, Biden was beginning to lose his capacity. I noticed it. I saw a speech Biden gave many years ago in a commencement address, and I thought he was drunk. I mean, I guess he was just mentally confused. He was giving a graduation address in Delaware, his home state, to a graduating undergraduate class who didn't know anything about Vietnam. He was talking about the entire time was talking about Vietnam and making things up about his role in Vietnam, his opposition to the Vietnam War, and all these other nonsense. I thought the speech was incoherent. And that was many years before he was vice president. So Biden's been losing cognitive facility for a long time. And now it's out in the open. So the issue is, and by the way, the border crisis is a growing problem for the Democrats, because now we have Texas at the border with the National Guard, joined by several other states. I believe South Dakota's sent its National Guard, and the states are asserting the right of self-protection under the Constitution when the federal government won't enforce laws on the books. So the Biden administration is facing a major crisis here as the election year begins to unwind, with the American public now being told officially that Biden is in a diminished mental capacity. The administration internally is fighting with one another. They're turning on each other because their policies aren't working. American people are getting seriously concerned and afraid of how much immigration is being allowed to come into the country and who is coming into the country. We've got now Chinese coming into the country. We've got people from the Middle East coming into the country. I mean, this border is a wide open invitation. Anybody who wants to come here can walk right in. And so the bottom line here is that America is now being, this is, from Zero Hedge. I'm just reading what Zero Hedge is saying. Bottom line, America is being led by a man who's too senile to prosecute, whose administration is completely dysfunctional. Well, that's our leadership. And what I want to tell you is that this is by design. This is not accidental. If you're Obama, who was announcing before he left the White House that it would be awfully nice for him, he thought, to have a administration in place that was really a figurehead, and somebody like him could behind the scenes be the real president. Biden bought a house in one of the trendy areas of Washington, D.C., and Susan Rice and Valerie Jarrett have continued advising him and working with him. And the continuous reports out of Washington is that the power behind the scene is Obama pulling the strings, that he's making the decisions. Now, one of the themes I'm going to develop today is that we're dealing with a woke group who are really psychopathic. I mean, they're hating people. They're actually borderline suicidal. Carbon dioxide being demonized. The planet is getting greener with carbon dioxide, and we exhale carbon dioxide. That's the key point. If you're going to close down farming because cows fart methane, which is a greenhouse gas, well, then we exhale carbon dioxide. If that's a greenhouse gas, then the basic bottom line message there is, why don't we all do the woke a favor and just euthanize ourselves and save them the trouble? Because if we're our own plight by carbon dioxide exhaling, then we have to be eliminated too, just like the cows. Now, this is insanity, but this is in fact the main narrative decoded of what the mainstream media is trying to shove down your throats, our throats. And they do it every day. I mean, if I go over here to I get the download of what the current articles are on global warming. Let me just read you a couple of what they're saying. Climate. Here we go. Trump's America will lose the climate race. That's in the Atlantic. Climate change reversing gains in air quality across the United States. Oh, so our air is deteriorating so now it's a health hazard. That'll please the WHO, which might plan for a worldwide shutdown in order to have reverse climate change. Climate experts sound alarm over thriving plant life at Greenland ice sheet. Well, I mean, look, if Greenland was more green, which it once was, which is why it's called Greenland. News alert for the left. Greenland was once warm. The climate is varying. It shifts. There's cycles. It is not all caused by carbon dioxide. There's more carbon dioxide in the earth 600 million years ago. We've had ice ages in that period of time. Now, carbon dioxide increases follow global warming. They don't cause it. Okay, so current climate, cracking down on deadly air pollution. Okay, so now I'm going to try to link a health hazard to this whole idea of climate change in order to cause a climate change health emergency. Okay, that's the bottom underlying theme here. So a critical climate system could collapse sooner than we thought. Now that's what they're saying in this article is that we'll track we're towards a cliff-like tipping point where the Atlantic Ocean currents abruptly shut down. Okay, once this tipping point is reached, it will have massive impact on climate change, plunging large parts of Europe into a deep freeze. What happened to climate? What happened to global warming? And significantly altering the Amazon rainforest ecosystem. Give me a break. They're talking about the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, which is a very complex phenomenon, AMOC. So it's part of the shifting in the Pacific of El Nino, which is warm water coming up north into the Pacific Ocean. When that happens, we get milder winters up here in the Northeast, New Jersey, New York. We just had a snowstorm last night. So it doesn't eliminate winter, but it produces a mild winter. That doesn't mean it's permanent. But now what they're saying is that these ice flows, the Atlantic is going to quit functioning essentially because of climate change. This is all climate porn. It's fear porn. It's designed to create a hysteria in which people say, and the young are doing this, look at Greta, where they are, going to say, we're all going to die because you people are using hydrocarbon fuels. Hydrocarbon fuels are a natural product of the earth. They are not fossil fuels. Earth makes hydrocarbon fuels on a constant basis. Fischer-Tropsch equations show it. If you want to understand it, I write a good section in my book on the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change, devoted to showing you the equations and the chemical processes by which the earth and the mantle of the earth produces hydrocarbon fuels on an ongoing basis. It's still doing it today. What you've been told in this climate change is a made-up nonsense that was designed starting in the 1950s. I cover this in that book as well, to merge the environmental movement with Marxism. And the goal was to destroy capitalism by getting the modern industrial state to quit using hydrocarbon fuels. That's what's behind this. It is not legitimate climate science, even though that's what the left would want you to believe. Okay, so we got chaos in the White House. We got a president who is demented. Kamala Harris is, if Biden's removed by the 25th Amendment, Kamala Harris is going to be the Democrats' president for whatever term remains, and Biden will not be running for re-election if he's removed for dementia. It's insane to be talking about this. Why do we have a demented president running the country? We don't. And that was said very clearly by Putin in his Tucker Carlson interview. He laughed at the idea that Biden was running the country. And he pointed out very clearly that what is running the country and the world is a non-elected group of people who have decided that they're going to create the oligarchy of the future. They're going to be the masters of the future, the World Economic Forum. It's a fundamental socialist idea. Hitler, who was National Socialist on the left, battling the communists, had a disagreement with the communists. Communists wanted to eliminate private property. Hitler wanted to keep private property, but he wanted to have the government, in conjunction with the multinational corporations, with interlocking directorates. So U.S. Steel and the German steel and arms industries would have shares cross borders. They would each own part of each other. And that power, with their bankers, would run the world, provided they're working with Hitler and the Nazi Party. And then there would be a little bit of socialism. So Hitler would have Volkswagens for the common person. He'd build Autobahns so you could drive fast. He would give government-paid vacations to workers who behaved themselves. And it would be socialism for those who went along with an oligarchy running the world. We are essentially giving Hitler the socialism he wanted with woke. And it's a combination, because the woke also takes themes from communism to destroy what exists today. The themes are social justice. The basic argument of communism was it doesn't produce equal results for everybody. There are winners and losers. That's the issue with capitalism. It's proved to be the only system in the world that allows for economic advancement, because people are able to self-benefit by creating economic activity. And from the communist point of view, everybody has to be equal. And that produces things like affirmative action, produces the EIA or EI, whatever it is, the equity, inclusion, all that nonsense, the ESG, the DIE.
Call it DIE instead of, it's called DEI, but DIE sounds more appropriate.
Okay, well, Keep that in, Chris. That's a good comment. Yeah, I mean, the alphabet things get completely messed up. Yeah, it's diversity, equity, inclusion. It's DEI. But in my mind, it becomes already DIE, die. Okay, that's the whole point here, die. Okay, and so the next article I want to cover has to do with what's finally being recognized worldwide about the electric grid. And the electric grid here is vulnerable. The electric grid is extremely vulnerable. We're finding that articles are coming out every day. And here is another documentary that is being done upon Epic Times. And the Epic Times is running some excellent documentaries. I really recommend subscribing to the Economic Times and watching the documentaries, also on Epoch TV. Okay, so what they're saying here in this documentary is that electricity is essential to America's unparalleled prosperity and productivity. Yet what we're doing is we're straining the electric grid. And former CIA Director James Woolsey testified before the Senate in 2015 that if America's electric grid were to go down for an extended period, such as 1 year, there are essentially two estimates of how many people would die from hunger, from starvation, and from lack of social disruption. One estimate is that within a year, Woolsey said, 2/3 of the United States population would die. The other estimate is 90% would die. I mean, think about it. If you have no water, you've got no food, you've got no light, you've got no heat, because the grid is down, we're back to a situation that is, prehistoric human beings trying to make it on Earth. We don't have the skills. We don't have the ability. Why do you think they lived in caves? It's cold. They were living at the end of an ice age. They needed fires in order to stay warm. Inside the cave, they could contain the heat. I mean, these are fundamental issues. But then they had to go out and find food. I mean, this is not, without the modern electric grid, we very quickly go to a situation where the population that is expanded to the current number cannot survive. And the point I'm making is that the woke, the engineers behind all this knew this. That's why they created climate change and global warming, because they want to destroy and kill billions of people. It's fundamental pathology. They're psychopaths. They can only destroy. A psychopathic personality is a very dangerous personality because for them, killing does not mean anything. It has no emotional significance because they don't value human life. They think about it as squashing a bug. It's irritant to them. They don't mind torturing. They don't mind anything that they can do to inflict pain. It's fundamentally satanic. Fundamentally, they hate life. They hate themselves. And it's a psychopath. It's a mental illness. And it's not real curable. You'll find psychopaths, when they get into violence, are very, very dangerous because they will engage in situations where they risk their own lives, and they all, quite frankly, don't mind being killed. At the deep psychological level, it is self-destructive, and the climate change movement is self-destructive. If we were to go along with the climate change movement, you'll see right now, just go track these companies who are building wind turbine farms, like Ørsted, one of the big companies. They had a big run-up in stock while all this was being hyped, and then their stock plummets. It was the same during Obama's year with Solyndra. These companies collapse because creating energy by wind and solar doesn't work. And it also burns out the grid system because our grids are designed with transformers to push the energy downstream that need to cool off periodically. And right now at nighttime, they cool off. If we have electric vehicles being in the demand that Biden wanted, plugging these electric vehicles in at night is going to keep the transformers going at peak 24 hours a day. They're going to burn out quick. They're not built to do this. And the climate change movement knows it. What's happening is around the world, people are realizing they've been lied to. And what they're doing is they're writing farmers are running tractors into Berlin and Paris. We've had a convoy go down to the border, which was not covered in the United States news. The United States news is simply propaganda. It's a government CIA-generated Truman Show to create a constructed reality to tell you what the government wants you to believe and parrot. Okay, so the next story is that, so the whole point of this is if we follow the climate change movement, and across Europe, they're already rejecting it. Germany has gone into a severe recession. Germany is deindustrializing. That means the EU is headed to bankruptcy. Not immediately, but with all this bloated structure of bureaucrats in Brussels and Luxembourg, the EU is going to topple of its own weight. And I've been saying this for 20 years, that the EU was another scam. It started out as a coal and steel agreement in the 50s after World War II. And the people who architected it, like John Monnet, knew they were going for world government. They denied that. Oh, no, this is just this is an economic agreement. Okay, so now the World Health Organization is going to complete this treaty, which they're coming up to a vote, and they're trying to say, well, it's not really a treaty, it's an agreement, or it's a framework, it's an understanding. Okay, the World Health Organization is unelected. It's headed by Tedros, who is very, very bought and sold by the communist Chinese. This whole World Health Organization is part of the UN. And what they are doing is creating new regulations that they're putting into place as part of this structure of rules that even the United States has agreed to. And by the way, the Biden administration is helping the WHO write these agreements. What the agreements say is that if the WHO agrees that there is a pandemic, and that's entirely at their own discretion, the WHO can then order a global lockdown because the individual nations have all surrendered their security and their sovereignty to the World Health Organization. So the World Health Organization can say there's a climate change catastrophe. If we don't stop using hydrocarbon fuels, Earth is going to burn up. Okay, so remember that last summer it was not global warming, it was global burning. They were saying it's the hottest summer ever. Okay, all nonsense, by the way. The 1930s were actually warmer. Don't expect these people to tell the truth. They're lying. They know they're lying. Okay, so the World Health Organization, it's 194 member nations, are going to cede authority to the WHO once it declares a global health emergency. And the Biden administration has taken part in writing these rules and regulations to put them in place, surrendering our sovereignty over to the WHO. Okay, now the WHO what are the bases upon which the WHO can declare this health emergency? That it's whatever they decide. They can take a local outbreak of a disease and say this could become a worldwide epidemic we're locking down. The one I'm most worried about is climate change, because I see the two interlocking, and I see that the climate change movement is building to increasingly talking about health, air pollution being a problem, this being a problem, health. And on the basis of health, they can shut down the modern industrial state. And knowing it would kill billions of people worldwide. It's just like we're supposed to be in Europe. Germany shut down its nuclear power plants. Germany is deindustrializing because it can't compete on a world basis where countries like China and India are buying all the coal and oil they can get and are running an economy with cheap labor that is going to take over the world markets. Okay, so the idea here is that the WHO is, again, a death organization. They're aiming towards death. They're aiming towards putting the legal structure in place in which they can kill billions of people simply by declaring a health emergency. And this is a sovereignty issue. If we don't understand this and rise up on this, we're going to have a major, major problem worldwide in that we're going to grant power. We're going to have you can imagine how it'll be again, millions dying, blah, blah, blah. We got to quarantine, got to wear a mask. All of this is in the works. If they're producing this much effort on a world level to create this legal structure, they intend to use it. And they intend to sell it to you by saying, we have to be better prepared for the next emergency, health emergency. We have to have the vaccines ready. We have to be studying the pathogens in advance. We have to have all the rules where we can make sure we don't allow this to spread. This is not the people creating vaccines, the virus groups and vaccines, the pharmaceutical companies have overtaken traditional immunology. Immunologists would say a couple of things. One, there's never been a disease that wiped out the entire human population. Diseases occur, they're virulent when people have never been exposed to the disease. The disease, as it spreads, weakens. As it mutates, it weakens. Why do you think we have the whole idea of gain of function? Weaponizing viruses, trying so that they don't wear themselves out. Yes, they kill people, but they don't kill everybody. And the people who aren't killed have stronger immune systems, which then pass on to future generations. The only thing that survives us on Earth is our immune system. It is not a vaccine that is designed to re-engineer the human DNA and RNA. Okay, now let's go on here to the next story, which is the whole idea here that this one is so bizarre. So the Satanic Temple, a satanic group, has now begun arguing. Okay, this is the Satanic Temple claiming abortion is part of their religion. And they want to make this a legal argument under the First Amendment to create an abortion ritual it claims will exempt women from state laws. Okay, so it's bizarre. The Satanic Temple, a nonprofit group in Salem, Massachusetts, where the witch hunts were, decades ago, a couple centuries ago. It's a nonprofit group in Salem, Massachusetts, has filed lawsuits in Missouri, Indiana, Texas, and Idaho. So far, they've been unsuccessful. But they're grabbing headlines arguing for new religious freedom to stop abortions. And they don't mind the controversy. This group made news by displaying a silver goat head atop a blood red robes during Christmas at the Iowa Capitol. This was the Baphomet, Baphomet, which is the goat man, bizarre figure of the devil. It's ridiculous. But Michael Cassidy, a former U.S. Navy pilot, this is being reported in the Epic Times again, who ran for office in Mississippi, took credit for tearing down this Baphomet statue in the Iowa Capitol. The Christian conservative raised $12,000 as of early February for legal fees after being charged with criminal mischief. So the U.S. Navy fighter, for taking down a Satan statue in the Iowa Capitol, he was charged with the crime. And so what this Satanic Temple, it's TST, the Satanic Temple, TST, created an abortion ritual that it claims will exempt women from the state laws. The ritual, along with the TST's new abortion clinic in New Mexico, was featured in November's Cosmopolitan magazine. And proponents of an abortion feel that a woman should have control of her body and abortion should be a choice. You got right to kill the baby. God creates life. We do not have the right to destroy God's created life. In a satanic murder, going into a woman's womb and chopping the baby to pieces to kill it, pulling it out piece by piece. So the abortion ritual involves the recitation of two of the group's tenets and reinforces the idea of bodily autonomy. They don't show you what the ritual is. I'm sure it's too grotesque. They just discuss it. And they're trying to raise it as a legal argument. Well, this is like lawfare, the use of the law to bend the First Amendment to praise Satan, not God. This is insanity. And at the heart, look at again at the heart of this movement is kill babies. All of these movements are about death. All of these movements are self-hating. All these movements are psychopathic, and they are suicidal at their core. Of course, they want you to kill yourself. That's the whole idea. Make it easy for them to get rid of you. And bringing these lawsuits under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, or state versions of that act, and to, in direct conflict with the Dobbs holding, reversing Roe v. Wade, is their goal. They're using Satan, lawfare, to destroy God and natural law and natural right. This type of story I thought would never occur in the United States of America. I could never, in former years when I was growing up and the like, ever imagine that Satan would be openly worshipped in the United States. And now it's clear that it's happening. This is when I look at all of this, it's why I conclude that in the end, God will win. Because this is so against God's law. God created this place. This place has laws. It has rules. It's not just whatever you want to make it be. Your schizophrenic idea that, your gender is different than your sex, so and intersectionality. So, you're black, well, that's 1 point. And then you're a woman, that's 2 points. And you're lesbian, that's 3 points. And in a former life, you were a cat in Ethiopia. Well, that's 5 points, 4 or 5 points, who died prematurely because of a disease that you couldn't cure. Then you're really at the top of the scale. So you ought to be on the Supreme Court because you've got more intersectionality points under this diversity, equity, and inclusion, the DEI, DIE. You should be the top chief, even though you might not be able to read because you weren't taught in school. You were taught to hate your mother, to hate your parents, to rebel against your parents, to adore Satan. This type of insanity, the embracing of the dark, the embracing of the evil, is at its heart a malware of the brain. And what it does is it produces destruction. Now, again, I've written about this. The 2 books go together, The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change. I'm saying that this climate lie is constructed to set the stage for a destruction of the current order in order this small group can get power. Okay, and the other books, why are they doing it? Neo-Marxism. So they're attacking the culture, attacking the family. Economics didn't work. We didn't have the workers of the world arise like Marx said. Marx failed. His theory was nonsense. But yet they morphed it under Gramsci, Italian communist, into attacking the culture. The Frankfurt School finished that off by saying, have unbridled sex, embracing Freud. We're repressed on sex because we have to produce things for civilization. Capitalism. We didn't have capitalism. We just had repressed sex. We have the machines do all the work. Okay, now that brings me to the last theme of this show, which kind of ties it together. What I'm saying, what's going on here, and you see that Elon Musk is funding this transhuman movement, which is essentially to try to put chips into our brains, which make us superhuman. It's a company called Neuralink. So at the end of January, Elon Musk announced on X that the first human had received a Neuralink implant, a device called telepathy. We're not sure if this is super smart yet, but telepathy works. What Elon Musk is saying is that you'll be seeing people walking around who are superhuman because they will have merged with machines. So the transhuman, but I think, Bill Gates, Musk, all these billionaires, Silicon Valley, which, by the way, has a dark satanic side to it. This evil is thinking that we can merge ourselves with machines and be superhuman. So the superhuman don't need the human. Like Harari says, we're useless eaters. Harari is this Israeli who's been writing books about echo man, echo human. Behold the transhuman. And the transhumans are blending us with machines because the machines are smarter than we are. And if we get brain-computer interfaces, which are saying BCI, they think that we can become machine-like in our computer ability brains to think at an advanced level. Okay, now, first of all, this whole BCI, the brain computer interface, started when they were learning that certain parts of the brain can be electrically stimulated and produce capabilities where people, for instance, who are not able to move an arm, if you touch the right part of the brain, the thinking can move a robot arm. They've learned how to do things like that. And so they think they can enhance human memory, processing speed, and cognitive abilities by creating a direct interface between the human brain and digital devices. So the bizarre idea, I think if Bill Gates could become his computer and perpetuate his life within his computer, so as long as that code doesn't die, Bill Gates remains alive and he can experience life in that code. This is not science fiction. This is what they're investing billions of dollars in. And again, I don't think we've seen everything there is to see about Elon Musk. I'm happy that we're not having as much censorship on X. But yet, I know there's still shadow banning on X because Cloud Hub is where I'm migrating to. Cloud Hub is really the platform, I think, of the future for those of us who want freedom, because it is not being censored. It is not being monitored. It is not being stored. It's not like Zoom. If you use the Cloud Hub Meet, when the meeting's over, the memory of it is erased. Whereas in Zoom, they can market everything from you. They know all about you. They know who you're connecting with, what you're doing. All that data they can market. And they can data mine the people who own Zoom and sell that to others. Our data is being sold and used to manipulate us. Fundamentally, this comes down to some of the principles of Goebbels, which is lie big, repeat the lie, blame somebody for everything going wrong. The Jews did this, the Jews did this, the Jews did this. Say that over and over again. You can brainwash people, especially if you don't educate them very well. You don't give them thinking skills. This whole idea that we can become transhuman is putting us on the throne of God, us becoming linked with Satan. And so Saul Alinsky in this left takes his rules for radicals and he dedicates it to Lucifer. And in dedicating it to Lucifer, what he's done is to combine Marxism's hatred of God. Marx hated God because he wasn't God. He hated God. Lucifer knew there was God. He hated God. That's the basic issue. And right now, for whatever reason, God has allowed Satan loose from hell. And a final battle is beginning to be waged with everything we're talking about today. And what I've broadcast before and talking about what Elon Musk is saying, combining that with Tucker Carlson's interview with Putin, the Elon Musks of the world are over here creating transhumanism. Putin is saying the State Department, also occupied by these woke, and the military, our military, with generals in dresses and wigs and lipstick, can't fight a war. And yet they want NATO to go to war with Russia. And our Senate, with Mitch McConnell, passed a bill in the Senate to put more money, more billions into Ukraine, where Senate committees are beginning to ask, where'd that money go? Well, it got stolen because Ukraine is a money laundering capital of the world, and it's also becoming a center of pedophilia with all the people who are dislocated by the war and children who are loose, parents dead, etc., can be picked up for sex slavery. And we're leaving it open. The State Department is pursuing this agenda. You've got Victoria Nuland in there who wants to expand and go to war with Russia. That's been the effort since going back to 2013 in the Maidan Rebellion, when the Soros and the State Department ousted a president of Ukraine, rightfully elected, Yanukovych, who was favorable to Russia. Putin said, and Medvedev had said in the last week, that if Biden the people behind Biden, Obama, the woke, the neo-Marxists, succeed in getting NATO to go to war with Russia, there will be nuclear war. And that was not an idle threat. And I'm confident Russia had intelligence upon which that claim was advanced, because they were back channeling through Tucker Carlson to get a message across to the world. And I broadcast here on what's archived on the Cloud Hub. You can listen to my analysis of that interview from Putin and what he was really saying. Putin was saying that Biden's not in charge. There's an unelected cabal in the bureaucracy, the deep state. I've been writing about the deep state for years. And all of this envisions that we are on the brink of a final battle, which is a spiritual battle. And in the end, God always wins. God will win here too. I'm going to conclude in a minute. But Chris has been has had kind of a cough, and I've not asked him to comment too much but at the end here, I hope you're feeling better, Chris. And you want to make some comments on today's show before we wrap up?
Well, apparently at the end, the lingering cough always wins, but that's a different story for a different day.
Okay.
Did you get to hear Senator Rand Paul on the floor yesterday?
Yes. Tell us about that, because that was very important.
The man rightfully went off on both parties for their role in overspending on everything, whether it be useless programs. I'm not talking about the entitlements. The entitlements came next, but the useless programs being the high COVID spending. Obviously, it was necessary at that point for a little while, but he's saying we have to worry about the debt. Then you're talking about the idea that we're spending all sorts of money on foreign aid where we can't even take care of our own money. He was going off on both parties for even what Mitch McConnell said to RFK Jr. at one point. Hey, don't worry. The money we're sending to Ukraine is going towards American defense. It's going towards businesses. It's going to go back to Americans. Huh. Well, that's the problem is it's still money. And who feels the pain? All of us who have to pay for the higher prices. All of us who have to deal with the idea that our money is going to be worth less when the Fed keeps printing it up. Powell said he can't keep printing it up. So Rand Paul was going off on all of that. It was about 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah, Rand Paul is right. He's also talking about all the money that's being stolen in Ukraine.
Yes.
He's talking about the corruption.
Pallets.
Well, we sent pallets of money to Iran. And again,
says, yep.
This Blinken guy is, again, another neo-Marxist in the Obama circle. And he's done everything he can to aid Iran, as has John Kerry. John Kerry's hated America since he put on his Vietnam uniform, or some uniform he probably got from an Army and Navy store, that he walked around with the Vietnam veterans against the war saying we were the army of Genghis Khan burning and raping in Vietnam. But he said that to the Fulbright Committee and disgraced himself disgraced the military. I'm proud to have had the opportunity, was honored to work with John O'Neill and the Swiftboat vets in helping to write Unfit for Command in 2008. Swiftboat vets speak out against John Kerry. And I did not serve in the military. I had eczema. They wouldn't take me. They rejected me at my draft physical. And I worked with the various university-based centers that were working on the problems of the anti-war protests, the race riots, terrorism, even back in the 60s. So I did a lot of that work, and I bird-dogged the Vietnam veterans against the war and knew what John Kerry had done against the United States and to disgrace the military during the Vietnam War. That military was over there to fight to preserve freedom, and that the war was completely messed up. We found out in the Pentagon Papers how much lying had gone on. The lying has been going on for a long time. And in March, I'm going to have a book out, The JFK Assassination, which is going to shock the nation. It's now in typesetting, and it will be out very soon. But the point is, we've got to stop the lying. The lying must stop. And the only way to stop the lying is the truth. That's why this is the Truth Central. Chris?
Quick note. Speaking of the opposite of the truth, did you hear the latest Joe Biden buzzword about inflation?
I can't wait. What is it?
Well, shrinkflation's old. We went through that during the Obama administration, so we know about shrinkflation. Now, his new one yesterday was greedflation.
Oh, greedflation.
Greedflation. He used shrinkflation and greedflation in a speech to the, I believe it was like Association of Counties or something like that yesterday. But that's the new one. He will never take responsibility for his policies causing mass inflation or
Yeah,
almost hyperinflation, if
I
you
wonder
will.
what drugs they put him on to get him to be able to read a speech like that, because he doesn't know where he is. He can't get off the podium. He's looking for little girls to sniff their hair.
Injects the steroids. There we go.
I don't have a clue what they're doing. But now that it's been exposed, the Democrats have got a problem. And if they try to run Biden and they don't replace Kamala, everybody's going to know Biden's not going to make it through another term. So, that's effectively putting Kamala in as president. The Democrats have two very unattractive candidates. And so unless they're planning to try to steal an election, I don't see how they can win with these people.
Here's what I believe they're going to do. If they can't steal this election, they're going to go and throw the election. They're going to let Donald Trump take 4 years, spend that entire time doing what they did between 2017 and 2020, calling him a racist at every turn, saying, tying him to every Republican who ever sniffed and existed. This way, you can taint the next Republican candidate as a white extremist, racist, nationalist, whatever word them and the media want to throw at them. And again, the Democrats will put together a pretty and subpar candidate people will vote for just because of the package.
That's a nice theory.
2028.
They've already run that play.
Right. But they always win that. They always run that play.
And we're tired of it. I'll tell you what they're going to do. They're going to create such a crisis that there won't be an election. And they have in mind the grand crisis of crises, whatever that's going to be. And they're going to pull it off as their October surprise. They're not going to risk another election. Now that they're in power, they're not going to risk another election. It might be fair. They might lose so massively they can't cheat. That's too risky. But we'll see what happens, Chris. We're not going to debate this today, but that's my marker on their plan.
I have another cool strategy for Republicans in blue states as well.
I can hardly wait. What is it?
You're going to like this.
Okay. I don't promise I like it.
I think you will. Republicans in states like mine and yours, New York and New Jersey, and of course California, know that their candidate has very little chance, if no chance, to win those states. Correct? But there are enough people frustrated with Joe Biden to either stay home or vote for a third-party candidate. So let's all put our votes in, since whether you want to vote for Trump or not. Put your vote. Republicans can put their votes in for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an independent candidate to kneecap the Biden campaign, and perhaps with some frustrated Democrats, give those 2 or 3, maybe 4 states to Kennedy and cause a real problem.
Well, I don't know how many nights you stayed up concocting that one up, but it's complicated.
I had a few coffees one night, and I was up at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah, I think the complicated plans don't usually work. Robert Kennedy is going to be disruptive in this election,
right?
But I'm saying there isn't going to be an election. That's my bet on this so far. The way this is all shaping up, they've got too many ways that they can create such a crisis of such magnitude and proportions that it will throw fear into everyone, and everyone will run to government to solve the problem, and therefore we lose our freedom altogether. I think they're preparing for their big play, and if they try a big play, we're going to try to warn everybody, which is what we're doing today. But let's wrap it up, Chris. We've got enough discussion on that. We've been out there with different possibilities. In the end, God will win here too, despite how dark it all looks. We've biblically been warned that final days would come and a final battle with Satan would come. I don't believe God created human beings to fail, or earth to fail, or all that exists to fail. We're here to magnify and praise God, to reflect in his image and likeness the sanctity of life. And in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14, we must get down on our knees and ask God to forgive us for not treasuring life the way God treasures life. abortion, chopping babies apart, taking God out of the schools, putting Satan into the altar. These are such bizarre and abhorrent abominations. And when I wrote the Abomination in 2008 against Obama, I had Daniel in mind in choosing that title from the Bible, Abomination. We're going to have to play it out. There will be a judgment of God on all this. But I think at the end, God will win. That's been the entire prophecy of end days. And this evil will be sent back to hell for hopefully 1,000 years, hopefully forever. We are here to succeed, to praise God. Nothing here is permanent. Elon Musk wanting to be transhuman. Bill Gates thinking he can, become a machine, computer, the ultimate Microsoft dream. He became code and therefore became immortal. Insanity. We're not going to let the schizophrenics and the psychopaths run the asylum. It's time for adults to step in and return to God. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is Tuesday. It's February 13th, 2024. We're broadcasting every weekday. Please look at our sponsors. We're on a lot of different channels. Get the free book from Swiss America. And it's all of this is on the toll-free number on the, this is happening. The coming global crash, which is in the works, will create an historic gold rush. Call Swiss America 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. Dr. Jerome Corsi, thank you for joining us. God bless.